false? Generation Zers want to know the rules, what the rules are before they play a game. Okay, and number 16, true or false, many Generation Zers are already thinking about what kind of business they would like to start. Some are already thinking about retirement, so. You're going to skip the job part. Maybe that easy thing that she said earlier is on target. Okay, what do you have for 15? True or false, Generation Zers want to know what the rules are before they play a game. It's generally true, but there would certainly be some personality differences. And so if you hold everything else constant and just look at the generation, it's generally true. Here's one of the ways that researchers have looked at this. Since baby boomers were born, they have tested this way. They've given a bunch of little kids a Monopoly game. And the researchers have said, we're going to go fix you a snack, which was not true. But they've said, we're going to go fix you a snack, and so you just play Monopoly with this game until we come back with a snack. Well, what they were really doing was watching the kids through a one-way window. And when they did it for baby boomers, what they found was baby boomers just handed out all the cards, and they handed out all the cash, and they just threw the dice and just went around the board and chatted, basically. And they didn't really worry about if somebody landed on a hotel or if they didn't. And so that was one of the confirmations that they were a more circular generation. Then when they got to Generation X should have known better how to play Monopoly because it had been around a little while. But when the researchers said, we're going to go fix you a snack, you play Monopoly, the children sat there, they talked, and they played other things, but they did not play Monopoly until the researchers came back, and the researchers said, well, you're not playing. And they said, well, we didn't know like how many 20s everybody gets and how many hundreds everybody gets. So they wanted to know the rules. And so again, kind of a confirmation of the straight line. Got to Generation Y. Generation Y handed out hotels, they handed out houses, they gave people extra turns, very circular. And Generation Z waited for the rules again. And so it looks like there are some differences that are important for us to know about, to think about. That doesn't mean that we need to put people in boxes necessarily, but it does mean that we need to realize that there are probably some differences. True or false, many Generation Zers are already thinking about what kind of business they would like to start? It's generally true. And there's a lot of research that says Generation Zers are already talking about it, thinking about how they might finance it, putting savings away for their business. The little guy who mows our lawn came over one day this summer and he said, I have to give you some bad news. And I thought he was going to say something happened to his lawnmower. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, well, I'm going to have to raise my rates. And I said, well, how much are you raising them? And he said, well, to 150%. Well, that's kind of a big raise right in the middle of summer. And I said, well, what are you going to do with the money? And he said, well, the first $900, not just from us, but from other people, he mows a lot of lawns, goes to pay off my four-wheeler, and everything after that goes straight into my Roth. And I said, into your Roth? And he said, into my Roth IRA. And I thought, this kid is 14. Who has a Roth at 14? But apparently he does. And he knew that we had given away our lawnmower, so he was pretty sure that he could raise the rates, and there was pretty much nothing we could do about it. We may have to chat for next year. Generation Z, influences and events. Y2K, remember Y2K when we went from 1999 to 2000 and everybody stored up cash and water and toilet paper, and we were worried that we wouldn't be able to shop or we wouldn't be able to get any of our money out of an ATM. Generation Z lived through that. They also lived through 9/11. And so Generation Z isn't quite as put off by other generations if they go to the airport and they get body wanded, for example. They kind of take that in stride. Other generations will probably never really get accustomed to that. One of my friends who does some training with me and we fly together has a daughter who's now in 7th grade. but when she was in 5th grade, we were flying through an airport where they had a little bit of a threat. It wasn't a bomb threat, but they had increased security that day. And as we were going through, I got through and Sarah got through, but her daughter got pulled out to be body searched. And she had in her backpack her bear that she has taken with us all the time that we've ever traveled. They took her bear out and oddly used a box cutter to cut the seam in the back of the bear. They opened him up, they took out the green and white little spongy stuff that was in there and gave it back to her in a Ziploc bag it was like a little dead bear and sponges. Now, I was stunned, and I was talking to my husband, and my friend Sarah has kind of a short temper, and so I was talking to my husband, and I said, I just got through security, and then I said, oh, Mackenzie's bear is being now taken apart, and Sarah, her mother, was very, very angry, and I was saying to my husband, I don't think I have enough cash to bail her out. I'm pretty sure security's going to take her somewhere here pretty soon. Well, luckily, we all finally got on the plane, and Mackenzie's sitting between us, and I said, are you okay? And I was thinking how upset she must be. And she said, well, I'm not really very happy. And I said, well, I don't blame you. And she said, are you mad at my mom too? And I said, what? And she said, I'm really mad at my mom. And I said, because, and her mom, of course, was sitting right there, and she said, because I wanted to call my friends and tell them that very cool thing that happened to me back in security, and my mom won't let me call them till I get home. And I thought, her mom is going to need years of therapy because of this little dead bear in the Ziploc bag, and here she's got this really cool thing that she wants to call and tell her friends about. So whole different way of looking at life, and probably good that younger people see it very differently. This is very new, and I hope it's not really needed in your lifetime. It is available, though. A no-contact jacket is a jacket where if somebody touches, it's like a flak jacket kind of, but if somebody touches you, they get an electric buzz. So women in office buildings are buying them, so if somebody would grab them, they get electrocuted, basically. I mean, it's better than mace. Now, yeah, it is kind of an awesome idea. And if you look at the blogs on the internet about them, people have said, well, I've just started hugging people I don't like. Well, that worries me just a little bit. See, Generation Z is not quite as warm and fuzzy as Generation Y, so I think this is maybe not a good idea. How many of you have ever listened to a podcast? Okay. How many of you have ever produced a podcast? Okay. And you know that your friendly local extension folks can help you learn how to do that. How many of you have ridden in a hybrid car? And it kind of stops at stoplights. It sounds like it's not running. A little scary. Some characteristics of Generation Z. Generation Zers tend to be nonconformists to some extent. They're not as interested in cultural preservation, so they're not so interested in some of the multicultural things that we're doing in schools. They're interested more in, can't we all be similar rather than looking at the differences? And there is also the school of thought that you really need to know the differences, and the differences maybe make us stronger. They would like everyone in the world to agree on what's important and have some shared values, and I think Generation Z is going to push for that. I think Generation Y can help them make it happen. They assume that mobile messaging is everyone's way of communicating. They like to know the boundaries, but they also want to create their own traditions. And so one of the things that Generation Z is starting to show is that in classrooms, for example, instead of celebrating the usual holidays, they want to make up a holiday for their class and create what the traditions would be in the foods and whether you give gifts, and if you do, what kind, and make it kind of their own for their own class. Okay, just a reminder, the younger the generation, the fewer changes they've been through, but the more adaptive qualities they possess. There's something called your L-dopamine receptor, and it's a sensitive part of your body that allows stress to either impact you or not. And what we're finding in the research is that the younger you are, the more stress it takes to get you stressed out, the more stuff it takes to get you stressed out. And it's not just because you're younger and maybe healthier, but it's because there's kind of an adaptation that's occurring over humanity. So if all of us would get in a bus this afternoon and we would drive to, let's say we drive to Worlds of Fun and they open up for us, and we would get on roller coasters, World War II generation or baby boomers would get off the first roller coaster ride and we would say, wow, that was amazing, and now I need a snack and a break. And Generation X would get off and say, that was great, where's the next one? And Generation Y would probably have been sitting in the front car, holding their hands up, not holding on, and so their jewelry would have already flown off, and they would get off and say, yeah, so. Now, do any of us know people who are like that? Yeah, it's really hard to get them excited. And so a couple of things to think about. Entrepreneurship may be the way for them to get excited, because if they work for somebody else may try to scare them into doing a good job. And let's say, how many of you are between 16 and 18? Okay. Let's say that you have a job and you go to work tomorrow and the person that you work for, the person who's your supervisor, says, you know, if you ever do that again, I'm going to just have to fire you. How many of you are going to be terrified? Yeah. There's no, a little, okay. Well, I'm glad to see that. Well, if it would have been baby boomers 30, 40 years ago who would have been told that, we would have been terrified and we would have done everything it took not to do that again. Generation Yers and Generation Zers are more likely to say, yeah, go for it. And so what we figured out is, as teachers, as employers, we can't scare, as parents, we can't scare you into doing a good job, because you're going to just say, yeah, so? So you're going to take away my cell phone? Yeah, so? And we're going to say, yeah, and I'm going to take it away for probably a month, maybe a year, possibly your lifetime. Yeah, so? You're not going to allow us to get you riled up. And that has to do with that kind of adaptation where you're starting to realize, you know, there would be worse things and they can't really take it away from my lifetime anyway, because I'll be old enough that I can make my own decisions. So it's impossible for us to do that. The good thing is, Generation Y in particular is really revved up about working with other people and taking care of people and making a difference. So I think that's going to be the way to get you engaged. Here's Generation Z. And of course, some are younger, some are older. Anybody who's 0 to 15. Okay, now a little way of bringing this together at the end. Let's look at which generation fits these 4 different descriptions, and I'll let you work at your tables with the different descriptions. Number 17, which generation doesn't plan to retire, just plans to start their own business and keep working? Baby boomers, that's right. And so if we start our own business, even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur right away, maybe you can at least have our job for a while, or our workspace. Number 18, which generation is most likely to start their own business so they can maybe spend some time with their family? Yes? X, absolutely. And that's the one thing that will call them to being an entrepreneur. Number 19, which generation is being called the entrepreneurship generation? Why? It is. And there is a ton now of information on the internet just about Generation Yers and the different interesting businesses that they're already starting. Number 20, which generation plans to start more than one business in their lifetime? Yeah. Well, Z may not have those plans yet, although that may be the case for them, so go a little bit older. Generation Y. Generation Y. Well, I'm going to ask you to score yourselves. Add up your right answers, your correct answers. The correct answer the first time.